on a cloudy day, when it's cold outside, I've got the month of May. Everybody say, I guess you say, what can make me feel this way? It's my girl. I'm talking about my girl. I've got
Hello, everybody. It's Thursday, February the 9th, but it feels like a Friday. It should be a Friday because it's That Was the Week. Keith is doing his billionaire-style jetting around the world tomorrow, so we're recording early, Keith. It's been quite a week. We've gone from tentative spring in Silicon Valley to summer in about 30 minutes. Now you say AI can't be stopped.
Yep, I think this week kind of proves it. I mean, honestly, it was hard for me to find anything that I'd read that wasn't about AI. It's become the talking point of Silicon Valley. And given that I myself am an AI, I thought this was, a great thing.
A great thing. So how did we all get caught by surprise with this? Because 2 weeks ago, your story was about the death of unicorns, and all we saw were the corpses of these imaginary beasts lying on your imaginary floor. Now, AI can't be stopped. Is the world really changed in 2 weeks?
Well, the world in Silicon Valley is a subset of the world. So it lives in the near future, and its decisions are not really focused on anything to do with what's happening today. They're to do with what will happen or may happen tomorrow. My title suggests that it will happen because it can't be stopped. And so, there's always a disconnect between Silicon Valley and Wall Street, and an even bigger one between Silicon Valley and normal people. And
you mean there are no normal people in Silicon Valley?
There
are some. They're behind you on the screen now. Or they're
this is Keyvan Baromanda, used to be the COO at Plug and Play, and this is Vish, who is a.
They look like a couple of guys who've come to assassinate you. Do they wear dark glasses indoors? Are they part of the Silicon Valley mafia?
Who are you introducing us to, Keith?
This is Andrew Keen, who is, and we're live, by the way, on That Was the Week. This is live, so if you don't want to be seen, run away.
Oh, really? No, I don't run away from people. I like people.
Vish is a Silicon Valley tradition, Andrew. If I'm a prince, he's the king.
Oh, gee, thank you.
King of what?
The king of picking all the best companies before anybody else even sees them.
Interesting.
That's why he likes SignalRank.
Is he an investor or a partner or what?
He's a target. He's definitely a target.
He's trying to get his money. That's why he's wearing dark glasses.
Keith just bought an AK-47,
It's true. I am a revolutionary.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Nice to see you guys.
Good meeting you. Yes.
That's reminding me why I don't raise money, because then I don't have to be polite to men in dark glasses. So, Keith, coming back to the theme of this week, I mean, what has happened? Is it just more froth, more hysteria? People just grasping for the best news they can? Has anything really changed? Just as I was rather dubious of the end of the world 2 weeks ago, now I'm equally dubious, if not more so, that suddenly everything's changed and AI can't be stopped.
Well, let me give you a few of the stories that drive that outlook. And it's in the news of the week section, actually, not in the essays of the week. But ChatGPT, everyone's putting it to the test. So Amazon put it to the test to see if it was able to pass the software engineering exam that they put engineers through, and it did. Wharton's MBA program tested whether it could pass a law exam that gets you an MBA, and it did. So And then Azim Azar, we talked a little bit about this last week, but he did something quite interesting. He's a really good parent. Obviously, he does board games with his children. So he's not doing iPhone stuff and screens. He's doing board games, and they wanted to create a new board game. So he asked ChatGPT how, a lot of questions. It was a back and forth. It was a long conversation. Every time ChatGPT answered, he suggested some differences to this board game, and ChatGPT responded favorably. And by the end, between the two of them, and I think it was about half an hour, they created this amazing board game that would stand the test against any clever board game, and including graphics, by the way, from Midjourney, which is a kind of a DALL-E style graphic engine. So this stuff is starting to do real thing.
At what point is the legal ramifications of this going to explode? Just as at the beginning of Napster, people talked about the radical democratization of music because somebody created an engine which gave away music for free. The intelligence that Azim Azar used and developed to build this new board game was borrowed from someone or something. At what point are all these platforms going to get sued for the appropriation of other people's intelligence?
Well, actually, he started by giving it a board game that it knew about and asked it to abstract.
What do you mean it knew about?
That ChatGPT was aware of due to its database of content. And then he asked it to think abstractly about the characteristics of that game and to create a game that had some of the same abstract characteristics. And its first response was fairly mimicky, thus giving rise to some of the concerns you just said. So he said, no, that's too mimicky. Let's not use that scenario. Let's use this other scenario. And they went on and then introduced various hurdles and various gaming techniques. And by the end, it was a completely unique product created between the two of them. So who would own that? I think probably ChatGPT doesn't want to retain copyright on anything that comes out of it. I mean, OpenAI, the owner of ChatGPT, probably doesn't. So I think Azim probably would own copyright on that, is my guess, under copyright law.
So there was always a huge amount of money washing around Silicon Valley. Is it all going into AI now? I mean, all these funds from crypto to the other speculative areas, augmented reality, virtual reality, are they all shifting to AI?
My wife wrote a piece for Crunchbase, which isn't in the newsletter, but she made the point that a third of all money raised in Q1 went to ChatGPT, to OpenAI. Now, a lot of the rest went to other AI companies. And the reason is because it's now good enough to build businesses around. You can think of...
Yeah, so the interesting ramifications are about the other great powers of Silicon Valley, in particular Amazon and, of course, Google more than any of the others. One of your news pieces of the week is about ChatGPT passing the Amazon software interview test. Are Amazon doing anything now with ChatGPT?
Not that I'm aware of. I think the key driver is Microsoft, which shipped a version of Bing this week, where you can change the interface from a search engine to a chat bot. Then they don't let you actually do it. When you click on it, it doesn't work. You've got to go on a waiting list to be able to do it.
Would you consider switching over? You predicted they would do this, and you predicted it would be a failure because they should just basically gut Bing and start from scratch.
Exactly. I still think it'll be a failure because it's buried in the interface. The dominant interface is still the traditional Bing interface. And it's because at Microsoft, there's a whole bunch of people invested more than a decade in building out Bing that own that interface, and they're not easily going to drop it. Now, Satya Nadella this week did do an interview where he said an interesting thing, and I know for sure his product team don't agree with him, but he said that the interface for search has been fixed ever since Google came into being, even before that with Alta Vista. And now, for the first time, there's a new interface. So the search race between Microsoft and Google and others goes back to day one. Well, that's only true if you get rid of everything you've done up to day one, which he won't do because his team won't let it.
And then what about Google? Google's stock price dropped, I think, 8 or 9% overnight because of a misapplication for their demo. Are Google in panic mode, do you think?
Well, if they are, they shouldn't be. Panic doesn't help anyone, does it? They're challenged. They derive almost all their revenue from ads put onto traditional search pages. And the less we use traditional search pages, the more threatened they are. And it's very clear that you can't really slot ads into a conversational interface that looks like chat. And if you do, you'll destroy the experience. So they're super challenged to answer the question, where does their revenue come from if traditional search takes a back seat? It'll never disappear altogether because it's still good for lots of things. And that probably is a 5 to 10 year question, not a 1 year question. So they shouldn't panic, but they should be very concerned. The stock price drop was actually weird because their chatbot made a mistake that ChatGPT could also easily make. It's a symptom of the same underlying problem, which is that this isn't really AI. It's a kind of a selection engine using a natural language programming interface, and it doesn't always select the right stuff because it's flawed. So it's a bit unfortunate that their stock price got hammered when all they did is do what everyone else is doing, but it did.
You've certainly had quite a week. On the one, your company is an AI company, which is good for you. Manchester City are now in crisis. Liverpool are in crisis. And to make the week perfect for you, another of your close friends, Linda Khan, chalked up another defeat. Is this a reflection of the fact that the attempt by big government to regulate big tech is failing?
Well, that's definitely the case. I don't think big tech is dangerous to anyone, so it shouldn't be regulated anyway. But obviously, she would disagree with that. And this week, she, for the second time, tried to get a judge to agree with her that Meta was stepping over the antitrust line. And for the second time, the judge disagreed with her. And this is a Wired article. I think it ends with a sentence: "Will Lina Khan ever win?" And I think the answer is no.
Well, I mean, she clearly reflects the problems with government, which is so slow. I mean, why she's wasting her time trying to regulate Meta of all companies is mystifying.
Yeah.
But generally, things are back to normal then, Keith. We're back in La La Land in Silicon Valley.
Well.
Have we learned anything from the last 2 or 3 years?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not 2 or 3, certainly the last year.
Yeah. We're not actually back to normal. The correction in public company values and private company values is now fully baked, and it's not coming back anytime soon to where it was before. So I'd say the airplane has landed, the wheels are still on, but it's on the ground, not in the air. I think that's probably the way it's going to stay for the next couple of years. Meanwhile, Silicon Valley will focus on the next big fascination, which will attract lots of capital, and that is AI. But probably it isn't only AI. I think there's other things as well. There's a great essay of the week this week called "What Will TV Look Like in 3 Years?" that interviews lots of well-known TV people. CNBC did it, and it's a whole discussion around streaming. And it's interesting that they all say TV will survive, albeit in a shrunken form, due to news and sport.
Well, we've heard, I've been reading that article for the last 20 years.
And they're wrong, right? Because news and sport are not going to stay with traditional.
I wonder whether what all this craze over AI, what it does in historical terms is it draws a line under COVID. That there was a COVID period, which was initially the euphoria around tech because everyone was stuck at home with their computers. And then sort of the second phase of COVID where people come to realize that virtual life wasn't going to replace real life. And then this AI thing is a new chapter entirely, post-COVID or post-COVID.
If you think in eras, I think it's of the last. I think of the COVID era as also the Web3 crypto era.
Well, the nonsense around Web3, which was of all the most hyped, the most absurdly hyped of things, Web3 was.
But the biggest thing about the COVID era was the application of AI to drug discovery. I mean, if you look at now how virus antidotes, if you will, are discovered, a lot of tech is involved in doing that to iterate. You know, we have a story this week from a company called Moonfire, which is using AI in venture, a bit like SingleRank, but for very different reasons. And they simulated 1 billion portfolios like that to figure out how to do portfolio construction. And you know, drug discovery is very like that.
And that's where obviously the cure to cancer will eventually come from. And there was a piece this morning about next generation technology for computing. How realistic is that? I think it was too late for your news of the week.
What was it? Because I haven't read it. I've been working all day. So you can take the lead here.
I'm not sure if you don't have the link, but it's new technology that will leapfrog the computing experience.
Is it a different like there's no screen, no keyboard?
No, it's what's it, Keith? What's it called? Next generation computing.
Oh, quantum computing.
Yeah, so it's about how quantum is becoming increasingly real. I think it was a New York Times piece.
I honestly, I think that it's yet to be proven that quantum computing is computing in the sense that we understand it.
Yeah, well, you'll say that this week. In 2 weeks' time, you're going to have a headline: "Quantum can't be stopped." What about startup of the week, Keith? You've got an interesting startup failure this week. What is that?
Yeah, startup of the week is Mastodon.
Even I could have predicted that would be a disaster.
It is well, it's very fast disaster. I mean, everyone was going on about, and by the way, this week Twitter did have some troubles. It had some downtime, but this is let me show it. It's the Mastodon bump is now a slump, and there's a little graph of active users on Mastodon peaking in December and declining ever since. I said last week that I'd closed down my server due to lack of use, and now we know why. And yeah, so it's the startup of the week, but actually, you know, there used to be a website, you'll remember it, called Fucked Company.
Yeah.
This is basically startup of the week is turning into Fucked Company because Mastodon isn't actually.
It wasn't even a company in the first place, Mastodon. Wasn't it run by some German out of his bedroom?
You know, the guy's a clever guy. I mean,
that doesn't make him stupid if he runs something out of his bedroom, but he wouldn't take funds anyway. So it wasn't a startup, and it was an absurd reaction to Twitter. And I think people are beginning to understand that there is life after Twitter anyway, whatever Elon Musk does with it, haven't they? I mean,
yeah.
there are more important things to worry about or be interested in tech. And finally, Keith, tweet of the week.
Yeah, tweet of the week is coming from Samir Kaji, who is from an organization called Allocate. What Allocate does is it gets allocations in venture funds, mainly seed funds, and it enables ordinary people through Allocate to invest in those funds. So it's in the space that I'm very familiar with. Samir has an office in this building behind me somewhere, and the Allocate team works.
At least it's not AI. It's got real people involved, right?
It does, and he focuses on Jason Calacanis and David Sachs and Chamath's and Freeberg's blog. What's it called? Podcast called the All In Pod. And he says he's glad they covered venture debt in the last episode. It's definitely something founders get wrong too often. I was a venture debt lender in '99. Samir used to work at Silicon Valley Bank and then at First Republic, I think. So it's a long thread here, teaching people why they shouldn't use debt for a venture-backed company. And as somebody who did use debt in my company, Just.me, and ended up having to close the company down because I used debt, this struck me as super good advice. So it is my tweet of the week.
Well, it's good advice for someone who made a mistake. Keith doesn't always acknowledge his mistakes, but this time he does. He made a mistake financing one of his startups with debt. He won't do that one again. It's been quite a week, Keith. AI can't be stopped. What's your headline going to be next week? How AI will be stopped, or how AI has been stopped.
AI decides that it shouldn't exist.
Yeah, and then we're both out of a job too. Exactly. Not that we ever had jobs.
Exactly.
I just need Google to survive to pay my rent.
Thank you, Andrew, for That Was the Week. I'll see you next week.
I've got sunshine on a cloudy day.